Did you get, I'd go out and get him entering the school again. We're gonna just fake that later.
Just do it later.
Okay.
Keyboard.
You can always append or shuffle video frames around too if you have to. Move.
Does the white balance look great?
Cool.
So, yeah, show us around. Tell us what you remember.
Yeah, Miss Lund. That was actually my teacher, or not really a teacher, but it was my third. I had her since like 2nd or 3rd grade and clear out to 6th grade. She's one of the special needs thing. I don't know the exact terminology, but yeah, she's one I very well remember. I spoke with her on the phone quite a while, but that's otherwise it, and a lot of these others I don't remember. It's been so long. This is where my 6th grade classrooms were, or at least one of them anyway. But a lot of these have changed so much, I don't know what's going on. And unfortunately, I don't remember what my 6th grade teacher was. I know it started with an S, but I can't trust 50% certainty. Or at least that's on the S anyway. Somewhere along this area, there was my 3rd grade. These tiles on the floor are otherwise identical to what I remember, with a random yellow and black thrown in every now and then. But somewhere around this area was where the 3rd grade classroom was. I have no idea where 2nd and 1st grade was. And these are drinking fountains that I remember very well. Of course, I'm not sure if they're working, but I don't want to bother testing them, wasting water. No point in doing that. Right over here is the entrance, and there's the office. And not too far down this way is where Miss Lund was when I was at school during this time. This is where the gym is. Yep, right over there is the gym. I'm not sure what that one was. Looks like a janitor's office now, but certainty isn't really nice. Let's see. I think this one right here was where my Miss Lund was, or was it this one? That's too narrow for that, so that ain't it. Just in the wrong numbers here. Yeah, this I'm fairly certain on was the otherwise identical grade for where Miss Lund and stuff and the such were my special needs. They actually had a point system where good behavior you score points and you can eventually trade points for items like a soda or a little toy or something like that. Sodas I remember very well were 1,500 points. That I remember with 99% certainty. Yeah, it's really high for that long of a duration. And there used to be a TO or timeout room over here. It was just an enclosed area where if you behaved bad or something, you went in there, you get 0 points for that half-hour slot for doing that. And of course, once you're otherwise settled down enough, there's like a little timer for 5 or 10 minutes or something. And when that's up, your timeout's over with, and you return to classes and stuff. Of course, on the wall on the inside of the classroom, of course this doesn't look familiar, but yeah, on the wall, something like right over here, there used to be little car icons, a little, let's see, what are those called? They're a little roadway or something, and you basically had these little cars that were laminated, and there was three days of at least 75% or your score or something for level 1. Then there's 80%, 85, and then 90 for levels 2, 3, and 4. 2 had 6 days, 3 had 10, 4 had infinite. Probably goes well over 1,000 or something. I don't know if anybody's ever got that high. But I was well into the 150s at one time. if you had a bad day, you actually go back on that thing. And so if you had a bad day and you were level 2-3, for example, you'd go to level 2-2. Another bad day would put you at level 2-1. And from there, if you had a third bad day in a row, you go back an entire level. Unless, of course, you're on day 2, or day 2 on that anyway, or in case that you go to the beginning of the level. So yeah, 150 days on level 4, you shoot all the way down to 1 if you have 3 bad days in a row. Or, that is, you don't get the 90 points. The higher your level, the better privileges you get, such as computer and other such things. That was the most part I remember the most. I have no idea what this was over here. Apparently the bathroom's given this, but don't have adequate certainty. Globe. One of these I had was Miss Iverson, but I don't remember exactly which room it was. I remember teaching her class once. Up this ramp is where my 4th and 5th grade rooms were. Of course, this looks a whole lot different because there used to be temporary walls and the such up here, but now they're otherwise gone. A whole lot of things have changed. Right over in this angle, right over here, is where my 4th grade class was, which is where Miss Feist was. Not sure what that thing is. And right over here was my 5th grade class, in this angle anyway. But now that they've actually got walls here and things are significantly different, way different. I don't exactly know where the playground area was, but that's otherwise as far as that goes. Wow, this has really changed. 12 years since I was last here, and what a huge change that has. If I remember, there was an area some pretty close over in this kind of direction. There was Miss Johnson, yeah, there it is, or Jurgensen, I don't remember the exact name, but it starts with a J and ends with an S-O-N. A lot of names end in S-O-N, I don't know why. And that was a reading enhancement teacher or something like that, but don't have really high certainty on that. This is where my speech teacher was, but I unfortunately don't remember the name. And I don't think it's that one up there now, but I remember a little board game called P is for Popcorn. But beyond that, I have no idea why I even went into there or anything, or had that speech class. Certainty is too low. This is where the lunchroom is, down here. I remember this very well. Of course, this part here, this handicap thing, was not here when I was here.
Was this before you had the problem with stairs?
Yes, this is before I had the problem with stairs. Because before I just walked down these like anyone else would, but nowadays I can't. I have problems with that. But this is where the lunchroom was, and that's where I basically ate. I always hated the school menus because I ate very, very little at the school menus. So, and the 3 things that you had to have on because there were like 7 or something different choices for meals on a particular day, and you had to have at least 3 on your tray each time. However, it's very frequently that I didn't end up with the full 3, so I had to end up choosing something to waste or throw away. And that was really bad design, and it makes no sense that you had to do that, but if you had to eat, that was what you had to do. A long time ago, I had one of those turtle shells from Mario. I was pretending anyway. That was just bouncing around off walls and stuff like that. But you see in the original Mario's games, yeah, that's one thing I remember very well. There were a lot of long tables for where all the students ate. Students came in every 5 minutes or something like that, and I always stuck to the back of the line because I always hated being in the middle because I didn't like anybody behind me. And that caused a long delay sometimes. But when you got done eating or chose not to eat at all, there were some stairs somewhere off to the left or something that you climbed up to get out to the playground, which is out there. And I remember playing a lot of kickball and the such out there, sometimes with 2 classes joining together of kickball. Yeah, that was really good times, that part anyway. However, I don't know how things are now. But then again, I haven't played kickball in pretty much since I was last here. And the last time I was here was in 1997. So, get that into perspective, and yeah, you can get an idea on the huge numbers. 500 million seconds almost. And that otherwise concludes the walkthrough through the school.
Oh, look at that. I think that sign still calls this elementary school North Hill. The sign still says North Hill, even though it's changed to Lewis and Clark. I'm gonna stand in front of it and get a shot.
Huh, I wonder when this was put up. Zero of these names I remember. Zero of those names I remember. This whole place has been so radically redone.
When you were talking about your not standing in line because people behind you, is that because of bullies?
Yes, bullies. I've had 40 bullies at one time in the school, and I was making my 4th grade or 5th grade really, really rough, throwing the reading comprehension, and I was so far behind on that because I learned really slow on that. Like a lot of things involving science and math, I have like 150 to 180% learn rate, but with reading comprehension, it's only 60%. I'm really slow at learning that. And by the way, 90 words a minute is how slow I read. I don't know why I can't get any faster, but I seem to have maxed out or something. I've heard that the average reading speed is like 250 words a minute. Why I'm so slow, I have no idea. And if I get too much faster, then my comprehension starts getting way down, and I start having major problems on that front.
Were there any, do you recall any specific bullies that you...
It's been so long that I don't remember. The last one I remember was, well, I don't want to give away names, but it was in 9th grade. First names are common, but so I think there was one called Josh or something that was like that.
And what exactly were their problems with you? Do you know why they would?
They would just be mean to me, say mean things. They would... Well, there's one case where one of them literally spit on my back. Seriously. They'd often whistle for no reason, really getting me irritated. You know, it's an easy way to trigger a fight with me is whistling, so I better be careful with that. And...
How did you usually respond when people would bully you? Would you stick up for yourself?
I usually just tried to run away, but sometimes I couldn't because classes are in session and can't do that there. And because if I left classroom or something, and I might get like a penalty or something and lose points on that scoring thing that was going on back then.
Did you ever try to inform the teachers of what was going on?
I think I might have, but it's been so long I don't remember.
But you said that all the bullying is giving you very high defense, right?
Yeah, very high resistance to that kind of stuff. Because once you get used to it, you get used to it and you build up a resistance against it. So it provides a good bonus there, at least. That's the only good thing the bullies have done, is built up their resistance. So whenever mom gets her temper tantrums and the such, I resist it very easy. It's like I have 130% defense on it or something. It's really high.
So you never
Just delete until they're gone. We're just waiting for them to go, okay? Because you can always delete.
Make sure there's some kids on there filming.
Oh yeah, we will.
Else I'll lose my job.
Yeah, no, there won't be any kids in it.
Yeah, it's just me, basically.
Yeah.
And the various classrooms that are nothing but air. Maybe water vapor and whatever else makes up the atmosphere.
So when you were, so you don't like being bullied for so long. It didn't make you angry at all. It just made you more resilient. Like you're not like.
At first, I was getting into fights and quite often, and having major temper tantrums and other things like that. I frequently went into timeout and the like because of it. And throw in the fact I was only getting 4 hours of sleep on average. Yeah, it's no wonder. My 25 and 2/3 hour sleep-wake cycle nowadays otherwise eliminates that 4-hour sleep problem. But still, that's causing problems in its own self. But getting 4 hours of sleep for 5 days in a row, it really has its huge effects.
And so you've always had problems adapting your sleep-wake cycle to.
Yeah, it wasn't unusual that I was. Basically, if the school day for pretty much throughout the entire school until 10th grade was, I wake up around 6 a.m., maybe 7, but I'm not sure in the 7 part. And then I ate breakfast, and a lot of breakfast, because the school lunches are always bad, or almost always bad, I should say. 95% of the time they were junk. Basically, I waited for the bus to come, the bus was actually just a basic, simple van or something, a minivan or something. And from there, I went to school. School started at 8:45 a.m., and I'm not sure if that is the same today or not. And basically, that's how it went. I just either went to the Miss Lund's room, as it was called back then, or sometimes the regular classroom if I otherwise didn't have too much trouble there. And regular classroom counts as 20 points or 0. You have to choose one. Good behavior, you get 20. Slightly bad, and you get 0. So yeah, regular classroom is a little on the troublesome side. On that front, anyway.
Did you ever get a lot of points?
Every day, except for shortened days, had something like 240 points. Because it's 8:45. School ended at 3. Or was it 9 that it started? I think it's 8:45. But I know elementary school ended at 3 p.m. and middle school and later ended at 3:15, or at least until 10th grade, where I had the 1-hour system then, which worked around my sleep-wake cycle quite nicely. And basically, I just went about my day. I got various pieces of homework, like annoying reading comprehension, but math as well, which I had no trouble with at all. After all, today I'm really excel with math. And one thing I remember, I was in 3rd grade, but I was doing 5th grade math. Most of the students were only doing basic addition and sometimes subtraction. There were these 1-minute worksheets or something where you had 30 random math things that you had to fill out within 1 minute. I was done on those really fast. There was even later on where you had 60 of them. I was still done with barely half the time left. Only writing speed prevented me from going any faster, because I can't write fast enough. But I was getting into multiplication before any of my others were, or at least there were a few that were getting into multiplication. 7 times 9 being 63, and I can do bigger math in my head too, but even complex things like cosines and tangents and logarithms, except for those complex things, I just only get an estimate on at least. But at least when I'm working out math for figuring out my game design stuff, I do use that to kind of give me an idea on what I'm expecting to see. But if I don't get it on my calculator or programming, then I know I've got something wrong. So I double check and stuff like that, but either way. So at the end of the school day, come 3 o'clock p.m. in elementary school, and let's see, that's when a bell rang, and basically was the end, and I got on that same bus or something. Otherwise, had other students going there, and had to wait for them to go along the usual bus route. And lunch was kind of random, but it was around the 11:40 or so p.m. kind of time. It was based on the grade, and there was like 10 or 15 minutes for each grade zone. Just for example, I don't exactly know with any reasonable certainty, but let's say third grade had its span from 11:40 to 11:50. Fourth grade would have 11:50 to noon, and so forth and the like. But that's just the general idea on how it was anyway back then. There were times, although unknown, I think 9 a.m. was one of the times where I went to the music class. There was this one thing in the music class where you had to close your eyes and try to guess. Wait for him to go by. That's okay, it's getting deleted anyway.
You were talking about.
Yeah, the music thing. I'm just waiting for the noise and stuff to go away. This many kids, right? 0. Or the square root of 4 minus 2.
Kids might want to move to a different area. There'll be a lot of parents coming in to get their kids.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Cheddar from Ramstead.
Oh,
Remember me?
Ramstead, yes.
How are you?
I actually wrote a book that has Ramstead as
All
one
right.
of the places that events take place.
Okay, good.
Yeah, The Legend of the 10 Elemental Masters, if you want to look it up.
Oh, really? Gotcha. Sounds good. You still doing the Sonic stuff?
No.
Sonics in the past, huh?
This guy,
Yeah.
that's where I'm at now.
He designs his own games now.
Yeah,
Yes.
Platform Masters, if you want to look it up.
Okay.
Platformmasters.com, can't get too much easier.
Platformmasters.com.
Platform
Platformmasters.com.
Yeah, it's a 2D platformer, but when you look at it, it looks 3D.
Gotcha.
It's because of the way I use parallax scrolling. Pixels times scaling equals coordinate units. What a simple formula, yet so powerful.
There you go.
so you had him in grade 6 through 8?
You're at Ramstead 2 years, I think.
Yeah, 7 and 8.
7 and 8.
What did you
He's the principal.
Oh, you're the principal. Wow.
Yeah, we dealt with each other quite a bit.
Oh.
Yeah, sometimes bad, sometimes good.
Mr. Jim Cheddar, can I help you? Okay.
Fast, you notice how fast they braked like that? Let's see. Want this one in the background again?
Oh yeah, sure. You're talking about
Yeah, the music
Oh, yeah.
game thing. Ready?
Yep.
One thing I recall quite well with the music class is a little game where basically you close your eyes, there was somebody on a table where there was an assortment of random musical instruments. Basically what you were supposed to do, or that one, just picked up one of the instruments, chose them at will basically, and they just made the sound with it. and you basically had to guess which instrument it was. Whoever guessed it got to pick the next instrument, and that's basically how that game went. It was quite an entertaining one. And let's see, in my 4th, 5th, and 6th grade years, third question mark, there was what is that called? Repeated rehearsals for various songs. One of them, I remember one called Moody Moody. There was another one, Sunrise, Sunset. I don't remember all the exact names or anything, but I actually kind of wished I had some of those because some of them are pretty good. And not unlike the 20,000 plays I get on some of the songs, but that's something different. My current ones that I'm listening to. But at least it does give you the idea, at least. And let's see. Trying to run some numbers. I really can't think anything else.
Do you wish you were able to take higher level math while you're in school?
Around the 5th grade or 6th grade or something, I don't remember exactly, I was kind of starting to get held back on my math advancing because I was 2 whole grades ahead in my 3rd and 4th grade. 4th grade, I was doing 6th grade math. I was quite a bit up there. However, in 7th grade, I did algebra twice. I have no idea why they wouldn't let me go to something higher like geometry. One thing I wished I could have done was something like trigonometry, because it wasn't until I saw Assignment Discovery on DirecTV about 2 years ago or 3 years ago that I ever learned how to use sines and cosines and the like, that I now use very frequently, especially in my game design. Arctangents for calculating slopes on the terrain, sines for figuring out the relative effect on gravity. There's all kinds of things like that I make use of. Want an exact angle, but you need to know the x and y offsets. Well, sine and cosine both work that out real easy. Of course, tangent and the arc versions of sine and cosine, arc sine, arc cosine, those are rarely used, mostly used for solving equations. But 7th grade and 8th grade are both algebra. 9th grade, it was a little bit more advanced algebra, but only slightly. 10th grade, I think, was geometry, but 10th grade and later on, the stuff got over easy and the such. There was like almost no challenge, and I even literally requested that I get a little more difficult stuff from material. So as I gain more skill and my learn rate is following my learn rate and the such, I could make the most out of it. And that's where my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade came in very handy, is because I got a pretty big boost on that. I eventually maxed it out because, the stuff that they eventually got into was the hardest they otherwise had in the room. The science one, there was one for chemistry, something like oxidation numbers and things like that I otherwise don't remember now. But that was just one of the things that I was getting into. But yeah, that one I couldn't understand. But whenever I didn't understand something, I had to get a teacher or something that at least understood it to kind of explain it. And that's basically how that went about.
What do you remember about Mrs. Lund? Do you have a shot of that close-up of that already? Okay.
Yeah, gotta make sure you get close-ups on some of these.
What do you remember about Mrs. Lund best?
From 3rd to 6th grade, I actually remember calling her Miss Land, kind of as an insult, because I often had some hard times with her and things like that. This was mostly during 5th grade, where I really had trouble, thanks to reading comprehension, where I literally guessed my way through it, because I hated it so much. Because I was getting novels, and boy do I hate those things. Ironic in a way, since I wrote my own novel. That was basically one of the main things. But then again, later on, it's now just friendship kind of thing. We get along quite well. But probably the 4 hours of sleep and the constant bullying that I was encountering kind of made it my actions toward her the worst because she always seemed to be pushing me away from things and other things, and bopping my head and such when I'm playing video games in my mind, which is kind of the origin of my mind game. She didn't want me doing that. Sometimes thought it was a hit to bump, but hit to bump is something totally different.
But what made you, after you moved on from being in her class, what made you want to keep in contact with her? What made you want to call her?
Just informing her of various news is why I ended up keeping contacting with her, such as lake visits, because lake visits only started after 1997, because otherwise I would have just been really bored, because I would have never touched the water, because I thought blue water back then was very dangerous. Touch it and you die instantly. That's what I thought anyway. But nowadays, I actually like swimming. It's just extremely rare, the only problem I have with it. And I can't handle water deeper than I am tall, so there's a problem in that front. But other than that, there's really no problem with water.
If you got over your problems with water, do you think you'll be able to get over some of your other problems? Maybe mirrors one day?
I'm totally unsure if I'll ever get over some of the problems I got, but who knows, it might happen. 20 years down the road, you really have no idea what might be happening. I might have a new problem, and some gone, and who knows.
And so because you didn't have stairs, stairs were fine in elementary school.
Yeah, stairs
were chairs fine in elementary school?
Chairs are fine clear until 10th grade or 11th. More likely 11th.
So so you'd say most of the problems you had in elementary school, those are gone, and then they've been replaced by newer ones?
Question mark.
Are there any that you've had your entire life that you know of?
Mirrors. Since I was 4, according to my parents, which is even before school.
And you have absolutely no idea where this started from?
I have absolutely no idea where the mirrors problem even started.
Your dad mentioned something about you saying that there's enemies in the mirror. Do you remember ever saying anything like that?
Huh? I have zero memories of that.
Really?
Enemies. Where's that coming from?
I don't know. That's what your dad said. Maybe it's a brain glitch.
Could be. I had an imaginary friend named Enemy, but mirrors had nothing to do with it. Enemy was causing some problems because I was like an imaginary bully. Kind of a strange thing in a way. And with 40 bullies, it kind of has its effect.
How much have you rolled?
37, 38 minutes.
Okay. Trying to think of more. Are there any specific stories of you being bullied that really stick out in your mind?
I really have nothing in mind that I can think of as far as events for key moments or something as far as bullying goes. I have otherwise no memories of that.
They've all blurred together, kind of?
They're very little variation, they're fuzzy, there's too much noise.
Do you think that's because you've chosen that it's not worth remembering, so you just...
No, it's length of time. Because I barely remember anything from before 4th grade.
How long were you at this school?
I was here until 1997. Late May.
So from preschool all the way to 6th grade?
I have no idea when I came here. 2nd grade, I think, is probably the earliest I can recall. But 2nd grade has 30% certainty. 3rd grade has 90% certainty. 4th grade and later, I have over 99% certainty on, which is the maximum I use.
So before 2nd grade, you don't remember at all where you went to school?
And I have zero memories from that. And I remember one case in 3rd grade where the cops actually came here because I was so troublesome, behaving so badly. I even got a warning or something.
Wow, what were you doing that made the cops?
Fights or something, rude behavior, and a lot of things like that. And bullying, lack of sleep, and those are the 2 main culprits behind it.
Are you do you wish you would have been better behaved in school?
To some extent, yes. So get rid of my video game addiction, 4 hours of sleep a day on average, sometimes 3, sometimes 5. It wasn't unusual for me to fall asleep in class, too, because 4 hours of sleep is like nothing. Because when you're in like 4th grade or something, you need like 10 hours of sleep. 4 is not good. That's why one of the major reasons I had trouble with school is between video games and my severe lack of sleep. I would say lean it mostly toward the lack of sleep as being the primary culprit.
Do you think you would have had a more enjoyable school if you had gotten more sleep? You think you would have been...
If I had 10 hours of sleep or whatever I need, and get rid of even 90% of the bullies, where I still have 4 left, even in that case, and yeah, things would have been a lot better. And of course, if I was more dedicated toward learning or advancing my weak comprehension, because back in 5th grade, I only had like a 2nd grade comprehension skill or something. And when I was in 10th grade, I was still only in 6th grade level, because my really low learning rate's only 60% for reading comprehension. Math I was falling behind on because I couldn't advance it. No one would let me. Because by the time I was in 6th grade, I could have been doing algebra. I remember one case when I was on the bus waiting for a student or something, and I was actually getting taught linear algebra. I don't exactly want to know what linear algebra is, but I know what algebra is because I do it all the time. Solving equations, y equals x squared plus 3. Create a curve, that's offset 3 pixels. Or not 3 pixels, but I just think of it in pixels because that's what I'm used to nowadays.
And you were talking, you can do double-digit multiplication in your head, right?
Yes, and you've got plenty of examples of that too already.
Do we? Have we filmed that already?
Yes.
Cool.
Got 4 examples maybe. I don't think you've done anything with the more advanced stuff like sines, cosines, logarithms. And
Can you do those in your head?
not exactly, but I can get an estimate,
Really?
a rough estimate.
How about how many digits up can you go in your head in multiplication?
Well, beyond a certain point, then I'm resorting to estimates, and usually I go 2 digits with fair accuracy. Because anything else after that, there's just too much noise. I can always get the last digit in multiplication, though, no matter how big the numbers are.
Really?
Yes, there's actually a trick behind it.
Is it on your website?
I don't think so.
Oh. Well, anything else you remember about your school days? Stories?
Ninth grade is my second worst year on history. 5th grade is my worst, and I think 8th or 7th grade, I'm not sure which of those it is, was my 3rd worst. And that's basically as far as I can recall as for the worst. 4th grade is among my best, along with grades 10, 11, and 12. Because on grades 10, 11, and 12, I was one-on-one, just me and a teacher. Eliminates the bullies, and because I was only doing 1 hour a day, it had pretty much eliminated my sleep problem. And I was so much more motivated to learn from that. I even actually had one goal set where I would complete every single homework assignment without being late for a pretty good chunk of the time or something. Like a half a year, a whole quarter or something, I don't exactly remember.
And when you were going to school for only an hour a day, did it help that was the bully problem was completely gone at that point, I guess, because it was only you and the teacher?
The bully problem from my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade is almost completely gone. I still had a bully teacher, though. But fortunately, I rarely saw her, so that was a good thing, at least.
So you have teachers you consider bullies too, not just peers.
Yeah, there are a few teachers that are bullies, but students seem to be much more likely. This particular school, for example, had something like 700 or so students. Well, 40 out of 700 is not good. That's almost 5%. That's a lot of bullies. 1 in every 20 students, basically, or 1 in every 17 and a half if you want to be exact. Well, based on the 700 estimate, that is. Yeah, that's not good odds.
How would what would the bully teachers do that was different than the bully students?
They're almost the same. Although sometimes they would say because sometimes I walk fast and I think I'm running or something, but I naturally walk faster than most of us, but they think I'm running or something. And there's this one teacher that I remember so well that I actually consider evil.
What would they do?
Well, that one teacher just followed me around everywhere I went. I have her on my site as Miss Hall, but I'm not going to give away the first name because it's confidentiality, you know.
And she would just follow you around and yell at you for everything?
No, she would. If I started bopping my head as if I was playing a video game in my mind, thinking I was hit to bump again, she would get mad over it. And because in 9th grade, when I had the stairs problem, I had to throw my book bag down or I wasn't going to be able to retrieve it or something, and I was risking hitting students because of it. And it took a long time for the school staff to finally let me use the elevator. Boy, that helped a lot. But even then, I still couldn't use the elevator all the time, and thus I had that problem. Heavy books, you know, that's like 15 or 10 to 15 pounds of books or something. Throwing them 10 feet down, you know, it's an awful lot of energy, kinetic energy.
And you'd throw the book back down to avoid dragging you down when you went down the steps?
I don't exactly remember, but I threw it down so I didn't run down the stairs from getting too much speed. Because if I were to go downstairs, I'd pick up speed pretty fast as if I'm running down a steep slope.
Do you ever try to go downstairs slowly, or do you always end up speeding up?
I always end up speeding up unless there's a handrail or something available where I can just stop myself and kind of control my speed. But even then, I sometimes slip up on that and down I go. And I may end up crashing into a wall or jumping into some student, or on the last 3 steps even jumping down, making a loud bang. And that Miss Hall really got annoyed over it, and every time she started bullying me, I almost tried to get into a fight with her or something, but I avoided as much as I could. Boy, man, was she so annoying. What a nightmare those years were.
So, was there ever a point where you actually did hit a wall from getting too much speed from the steps?
I've hit walls. I think I might have ran into a student a few times, but really not too much of a trouble, at least. But then again, I was stuck at the top of the stairs waiting for students to go by for 3 minutes, almost always late because of it. So, and luckily I didn't get detention, because otherwise I'd be after school for 3-4 hours or something, every day almost. Yeah, so I really lucked out on that. School ends from my middle school and onward at 3:15 p.m. Now think of staying at the school to 6:15 every day. Yeah, no wonder.
Detentions were 3 hours?
No, it's 30 minutes per detention, times being late 6 times. Yeah, huge numbers. There's probably a 7 or 5 that I might have normally gotten. Low end might be a 2 or a 3. So yeah, I was pretty much guaranteed a detention, but I was very lucky that I didn't get it. I might have gotten it once, but that was it.
So you tended to be late to like every class, almost every
Yeah,
day?
that was because of the stairs, and this was only in 9th grade. 7th and 8th grade, I was rarely ever late. And I might have had detention because of that, but 7th and 8th grade, stairs, 0. Bullies, plenty.
Ninth grade is at Central Campus.
Ninth grade is Central Campus. And that was probably the worst school I've ever been to. And it was because of the stairs, my stairs problem. And the bullies, of course. But every school I went to had tons of bullies.
Was there any, how about the other kids, the kids that weren't bullies? How did they treat you?
They just treated me like any other student. As if nothing was special. It was extremely rare that I could ever get anyone even into the, well, nowadays the semi-favorite range of my compatibility range. And that starts at 6 1/4 and stops at 25 for the upper end, or before 25. 25 is a favorite, 100 is a high favorite, 400 and above is extreme favorites. But it was quite common that they were all either neutral or slightly above neutral. It's like, I have no idea what it's like to have any considerable friends. I have virtually no experience with having friends. It's always bullies, almost no friends. Teachers are really the only things I stood a chance at having friends with.
You think adults understood you better than...
I think adults did definitely understand me better, but certainty on that's only 80%.
You said Bill McCann was a friend, though.
Yes, Bill McCann is definitely a friend. He has passed 100 back in 2000 on that scale, so he becomes a high favorite.
Is he the only person you have to go past 100?
There's another one on the forums that has passed 100
Oh, yeah.
under the pseudonym Sunflowers on the How What Why forums. But even on forums I get bullies, but nowhere near as much. Probably because of moderation or something being a lot better. But at least I didn't take part in flame wars and the like. Usually when I see flame wars going on, I just leave them alone, let the moderators take care of them. Or in more recent times, the report button that sends a warning off to moderators.
Do you enjoy socializing on the internet?
Very little, actually. Except for on YouTube, where I otherwise have little in the way of bullies, but it's the high rate of bullies that I have that I tend to avoid socializing.
Even on the internet?
Even on the internet, I tend to avoid it.
And, but, I mean, there's quite a few people on the internet that are fond of your stuff. Your YouTube channel is pretty popular.
Yeah, no kidding. At least in that case, well, like I say, I do have bullies on the internet, but nowhere near as much as I had in schools. But I also have quite a few that get past the 6 mark on my compatibility scale, marking them as a semi-favorite or semi-friend or just a partial.
That's good.
And there's a few that pass 25, although not very few. Well, it's actually very few that pass 25, which basically I'd consider a true friend. And there's only 2 that has ever passed the 100 mark, a high friend, if you will. No one has ever passed the 400 mark, or even gotten close. 130 is the record, which is nowhere near 400. And you gotta remember, my compatibility motive system is logarithmic, meaning that 1, 10, 100, 1000, they're all equally spaced, as opposed to your usual 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc.
What about your family? Do you rank those on your compatibility scale?
Yes, but they're generally not very high compared to some that I've seen. Some teachers are actually better. My mom's really the only one that passes the 25 mark.
And why do you think that is?
She gets along with me very well. Dad I don't see very often, but he seems to get a little grumpy every now and then too or something, so I don't keep near him very often. Sister I interact with very little, but she's probably one of the other ones that might have passed the 100 mark, because back when we were playing with those cars and the like.
So, I mean, your sister, you consider her a friend, right?
Pretty much, but I don't Technically, by my systems, she would be a friend, but doesn't count because she's family. Friends are outside family. Not relatives either, like grandmothers and sister-in-laws and nephews and the such. That's all family and otherwise doesn't count. A neighbor next door would qualify.
But you don't know your neighbors all that well.
I barely even know my own neighborhood.
Do you ever think about just walking around and trying to get to know people, or?
Everyone, I seem to have like a 10% success rate in finding someone that at least has any interest in the kind of stuff I am in. Like, I have a hard time finding anyone that's into video games. I think the last time I encountered somebody like that was 5 years ago. It could be long times like that. It's not unusual.
And do you remember who was the last person you met that had a mutual interest in video games?
I have no idea who it was.
So you never? Would you like to? Would you be interested in playing video games, like multiplayer video games, with people if you had people to play them with?
Yeah, I've never experienced a single multiplayer thing with actual multiplayer in itself. There's time trials and stuff like that are single player, but that's otherwise as close as I ever get to multiplayer. Online stuff I don't trust, so that's X'd off automatically.
Why don't you trust it?
Viruses, spamware, and a lot of other things like that. Because you've got constant transfer of internet activity, and should somebody hack into an account or something, like I think happened with either PlayStation or Xbox, I don't remember which one it was, but yeah, that's the very reason I stay clear of those online only type things. Because with normal games like Disgaea, the only thing you got to worry about is your memory card failing, or the system deciding that it needs to die, or losing your disk.
So you're not a fan of the current consoles then?
I'm not a fan of the current consoles because two things. Very, very few games of interest, and cost. It's like I have to pay $200 for a single game. 2 games at that. I don't think there's any worth in doing that. I'd rather upgrade my computer considerably before I even bother with such consoles. By the time I get the PlayStation 3, for example, it might be 2 years down the road. As in, clear out the year 2013 or even 2014 might be possible too. The system has to drop down to like $100 or something before it even has a chance. Then throw in the games, and only 2 games of interest, both of which are Disgaea. Sonic's gone downhill, Metroid I have no idea, because it pretty much disappeared. Mario's disappeared, because it's always on handhelds. And I don't like handhelds because battery life is so limited, the screen size is so tiny, and a lot of other things. So yeah, I'm really limited on that front.
There's Mario and Metroid on the Wii, but you don't like motion controls.
I strongly dislike motion controls. I strongly dislike joysticks, but sometimes I'm stuck with it.
Oh, you don't like joysticks or like analog sticks either?
Nope.
Why is that?
I prefer the D-pad.
Do you think it controls better, or?
Yeah, the D-pad controls a lot better. Because if your joystick is off by even a 1/16 of an inch, you're turning, and a fairly amount. So you really can't get straight or anything like that, like you can with the D-pad.
About to roll out. It's about to roll out. Alright, that's good here. Let's get some exteriors. What do you think?
I'm going to get some other shots of
Yeah. Sure.
approximately where things are.
Yeah. Are these supposed to be benches? I feel like I'm gonna break these if I sit on them.
I don't know if they are or not.
Yeah, they're benches.
Yeah, but if you break them, you're paying for them.
It's for little kids, man.
Yeah. This is where hang your clothes and jackets and stuff like that. Mittens, because there's a playground somewhere off over this direction.
I think I saw it outside that door all the way over there we were at.
Yeah, just go straight and off to the left. There's a playroom over there, a playground.
Have you ever played any game that you use the joystick for?
Super Monkey Ball.
Oh yeah. You like
Final
that?
Fantasy 12.
You like Super Monkey Ball quite a bit though, right?
Yeah, it's a super speed, but I don't like the joystick controls because sometimes I slip on the joystick where I'm pushing up on it, then my thumb slips and the joystick jumps back to where it was, and it screws me up quite often.